Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? We don't have Commissioner Zita here, but we are just a little bit into our meeting time, and we have Mayor Kmet needs to be out of here at 2:30 and 2:15. Okay, so anxious to be sure that we get through the agenda, and you do have a busy one. So again, welcome. This is the second Executive Board Group meeting on this new phase of the Capitol Lake Lower Deschutes Watershed project. So let's go ahead and do introductions. And Chris, did you want to start? I know you've got someone to introduce.
Sure. My name is Chris Liu, Director for DES, and I would like to introduce Linda Farmer, who's right over there. Linda Farmer is the Communications Director for the Department of Enterprise Services, but she's also going to be my backup here in case I can't make a meeting. She's authorized to make decisions for DES.
Great, thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, Jeff, we'll just go around the table real quick here.
Oh, you just covered it.
Okay,
Okay, Jeff Dickerson, Squaxon Tribe.
Sure. And I'm Bud Blake, Thurston County Commissioner.
Oh, Jesse Massengale with Floyd Snyder, part of the consulting team supporting DES on the EIS.
Tessa Gardner-Brown with Floyd Snyder.
Cheryl Selby, City of Olympia.
Pete Kmet, Tumwater Mayor.
all right. Very glad to, again, have you all here. I'm Susan Heyman. I'm with Enviro Issues. Introduced myself to you last time, and we did not meet that long ago, October 2nd, right? So, yeah, exactly. It was very fast. So I'm glad to be back here with you. That meeting was as jammed as this meeting is going to be, but I did want to take just a minute just to clarify what my role is so that hopefully I'm helpful to you as you guys are meeting. So again, you have a full agenda. I think that's probably going to happen rather routinely. So one of my important responsibilities is just try to keep things on time and to help you meet your objectives. The agenda is yours. So if we end up needing to take a little more time on one topic or take a little less on another, then I'll just ask you how you want to accommodate that. So if we are starting to take more time, you may hear me gently, respectfully intervene and just say, hey, what would you like to do? It seems like there's a lot of interest in this topic. Should we spend more time? And if so, where would you like to take that time from? So I'll be doing a little bit of that, and then just capturing things that need to be captured, and mostly trying to help ensure that you are meeting the objectives you set for yourselves, and anything I can do to make you be successful here is what I'm all about. So, and then I work with our team to just ensure that we get good documentation of the meeting. So any question about my role or what I'm doing here? Okay, great. Then I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse and we'll just jump right in.
I think that sounds great. Mayor Selby and Mayor Kmet do have to leave a little bit early. This agenda, the similarity or consistency with October 2nd and our future agendas will include just time for roundtable feedback and discussion on anything, as well as opportunity for public comment if there's folks in the public that would like to have a chance to speak. And then what I also want to close us out with is a logistical scheduling of our January meeting or touching base on that. So I think we'll try to get through the substantive pieces before you folks have to take off. And so with our first agenda item, we did a project overview on the 2nd. We walked through our process map. We kind of did a high clip. Today, Tessa's going to just touch on the purpose of the EIS analysis and some of those key milestones that we didn't really go into on the 2nd.
I'm going to stand up as we do this. And I wanted to mention that it's Jesse's birthday today, so everybody has to be especially nice to her.
All right.
She's here with us and not taking the day off, which she should be doing. Okay. So again, the purpose of this, 10-minute agenda item is just to make sure if there are any questions about the timing and the milestones that we intend to move through in this process, that we have the opportunity to go through them. And I think that, Jesse walked us through that full process map last time, but at the very basic level, in terms of the steps to complete an EIS, there are those that are prescribed by state law, the State Environmental Policy Act, and there are these basic steps. So We talked about scoping. We're in scoping through November 13th, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we've heard to date. It's been a good scoping process with good community engagement. In 2019, we'll begin the technical evaluation and alternatives analysis. And the thinking right now is that that work will keep us busy through 2019. We will have a better understanding of what our kind of nitty-gritty schedule is once we define the scope of the environmental impact statement, but this is our best guess at this time. In 2020, this is when we put together the draft and issue the draft environmental impact statement. So that's the big reader-friendly document that summarizes our technical analysis and alternatives analysis and is available to the public and agencies for comment. And then finally, we expect in 2021, that's when the final environmental impact statement is issued, and in that document, the preferred alternative is identified. Are there any questions about the timing, about how we move through these steps beyond kind of what we've covered here and what Jessica showed to you in the larger process map?
I do, yeah.
Sure.
How much involvement not just the public, but the jurisdictions as far as the scoping portion of that, and when and how, the whole process of that?
The scoping portion of it. Should we just jump right into that?
Or whatever's convenient.
Okay, we'll touch on scoping next?
Yeah.
Okay, so these meetings are occurring during scoping, and we're also meeting with the work groups during scoping, and we've had 2 public comment meetings, and Jesse will go over those in just a bit. But I think that we can close this up. We just wanted to make sure if there were any questions that we had an opportunity to get to those, and then really to highlight that the work for the technical evaluation and alternatives analysis is to look at the impacts and mitigation measures of the long-term management alternatives that are carried forward for further evaluation. As part of that process, we'll work with coordinating agencies, and Jesse will describe our thinking behind that. But the focus of this document really is the area over which DES has jurisdiction over, and those technical analyses that help to make a decision about a long-term management alternative. Okay.
Yeah, I think, this is the process, you don't have that one up. This is the process map we reviewed last time. The only modification we've made is that we have updated it to reflect that we are meeting with the executive work group twice in October, and that we also anticipate meeting with funding and governance in January after scoping as well. And that when we first had our draft, we weren't sure if we would meet with them in January or not, but we were able to meet with funding and governance earlier this month, and we'll recap that. So we have been able now to kind of walk through not just the executive work group, but the technical and funding and governance work groups, walk through the process map, describe the briefings and the approach for interest group briefings now, and also related to the draft EIS, and the approach for the community sounding board as well. So our anticipation now is that we would post this to the project website, and just wanted to communicate that and let you guys know. And we're moving forward with this, and like Tessa mentioned, as we get through the scoping period and our scoping report, and we're really engaging and starting the technical analysis and fleshing this out with our teaming partners, we will go into greater detail, the quarters ahead of us.
Do we have copies we can take with us to the...
Yes, absolutely.
And would it be possible to get some extra copies?
It would also be possible to get extra copies, because I think we have. I mean,
Sure.
here's another.
Here, you can have this one too.
Perfect.
Special
We
update.
have dinner for you.
Thank you. Okay.
So, question.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a moment ago we'd be talking later in the meeting about scheduling a meeting in January.
Yes.
So if you want to discuss this point then, we can. But I was concerned about the scheduling of a meeting in January, and just graphically the representation here appears that that's right on top of the scoping report being issued. And I wanted to make sure that we are sequencing our events such that we have another executive committee meeting before the scoping report is issued.
That's correct.
Okay.
You're correct. We're targeting January 9th through 14th is what is in the doodle poll for our potential executive work group meeting. The schedule that we're looking at is the scoping report would not be completed till the end of January. So we would be walking through the detailed information we got through the scoping periods and the content of the report and kind of briefing and sharing that with you prior to finalization and completion at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You just can't tell that.
I know they're big
Little
circles with a
boxes.
diamond and yeah, exactly. And with that scheduling of the January meeting, we will also be sending out, or I'll be sending out doodle polls to the technical and funding and governance work groups to schedule a meeting, January meeting with those groups as well. I'm doing that as soon as our meeting documentation is complete for those folks. And ideally, depending on where all the calendars fall, we would love to be able to meet with technical, meet with funding and governance, and then meet with executive, similar to that sequence we did in phase 1, so that we can say, hey, here's input from technical, input from funding and governance, and bring that forward. And hopefully, because it's far enough advanced, we can make that happen. So.
Did I also hear you say that you were going to meet with stakeholder groups too?
Well, we've been doing interest group briefings, but we won't have another set of meetings in January quite yet. We think the community sounding board will come after that when we're really getting into the technical analysis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to our next agenda item, which is the project logo and name, and then we're going to come back to some of what we've touched on around scoping, because we just want to be able to communicate and summarize for you the scoping meetings and major themes and whatnot. But the project logo and name. So we, on the 2nd of October when we met, we discussed and received some input around the project logo and the name. And our homework item from that, our action item, was to come forward today with some variations on what that might look like. We transmitted those on Thursday, I think, right? The days on Thursday, so that you had it a little in advance of today. And I have copies as well if folks want to kind of flip through them. They printed large here when we had someone print them for us. So forgive me, they're huge. And to kind of help tee up this discussion, there are important elements for us to make sure that we all have an understanding of and thoughts in our mind. And do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we've described to you that we have an interdisciplinary team that we're working with, and as part of that team, we are engaged with ESA, Environmental Science Associates. They are one of the regional leaders in SEPA EISs, and they bring a good SEPA foundation to our project team. We work very collaboratively with them, and when we had generated these coming out of the executive work group, when we engaged them to provide their input on what they saw here. And they had a couple tips for us, a couple areas of guidance that they would like us to all be aware of in terms of naming a project in a SEPA context. And so I'll just run through those quickly. One is that the name really should convey the project purpose. And so retaining long-term management project is super important because the project purpose is to really identify that long-term management plan. And so from a SEPA perspective, having that out front in the name is very important. Additionally, they said kind of the other super important thing to know is that typically project names don't reflect the alternatives. And the reason for that is a couple. One, because it doesn't capture all the nuances of an alternative. So for example, if the hybrid was to be advanced and there are several important variations on that hybrid, it wouldn't capture that. Additionally, there could be some confusion as alternatives evolve through the process. If the lake was to evolve in a significant way, or if the hybrid was to evolve in a significant way, it wouldn't capture that. And then finally, for just clarity and readability. So they wanted to kind of provide that as good guidance for us, and then also just the general importance about name recognition for the community as we move forward through this community process.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, what we were taking away is that, it's important for us to retain the long-term management project. That's the project intent, the purpose, so that folks understand this, that it isn't one facet of just the area around Capitol Lake or within the watershed, that it's the long-term management project. So we wanted to make sure we shared that as well. And then there's an important distinction between the project name and the project logo. So what we can discuss today and dive into is potential variations of the logo, perhaps, as we've shown here, but retaining the elements Tessa spoke to in the project name. So for example, the guidance around a SEPA EIS project and not having the alternatives to be included within the project name, but that perhaps they can come forward in a logo concept or something like that. There is a distinction between a logo and a name. So we thought we could have a discussion and see what you guys think about these. I'm just looking and they printed like two, no, they're different, okay. Have a discussion and see what you guys think and what feedback you have, so that we and the Enterprise Services team can take all of this in to inform our decision-making around the project logo and around the project name.
Maybe just to collect this feedback on the charts as we go.
Sure. That sounds great.
So any thoughts, any feedback as you look at these?
Should we sort of walk through the reasoning for each option?
Yeah.
I have a question about the word name lake.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the cover, it's our current name that we have. The next couple pages include capturing the primary kind of classic alternatives associated with the project as they have moved forward over time. That is estuary, hybrid, and managed lake, listed in alphabetic order. You'll see that these two options retain long-term management project for the reasons we just spoke about. What is different in these two options that include those key primary alternatives is the order of Capitol Lake / Lower Deschutes Watershed versus Lower Deschutes Watershed / Capitol Lake. That's the difference there. On the next page, this is just a different stylistic presentation. It's kind of the same concept and content, just in a different order. And again, we're just using estuary, hybrid, and managed lake as the vernacular or names that have been used with the key alternatives over time and also fit into a logo. Similar, different presentation. The one that then you'll start to see a change where it says environmental impact statement for Capitol Lake and the three options. This was something that was discussed as well, but it does not retain the long-term management project conclusion or goal of the overall project.
Which you think they think is important.
Mm-hmm. And we would concur. So this is absolutely something we're discussing, but if we are thinking about that guidance and the applicability of wanting to retain long-term management project, then the last few options, we would not move forward because they would not have that descriptor. So these were,
Did you say anything about that one?
it was, yeah, just that it was same content, different style.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Approach. It does have Lower Deschutes Watershed, good catch. It does not include Capitol Lake, so that is this one. in the title. And the rationale behind continuing to include Capital Lake in the title is that that's the name that the community identifies and is the current name of the water body under evaluation as part of the project. And we do want to make sure that we can have a project title, a project logo that is recognizable to the community, that they can understand and track.
So you're saying that's not a conclusion?
Yes, it would. Well, this one has the long-term management project conclusion, but it does not include Capital Lake as the current water body name.
But I'm saying that when you use the word Capital Lake, it's not a conclusion.
Oh, an alternative. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's why we have managed lake to reflect an alternative, not the current physical geographic name.
I can't recall, who was it that wanted there to be the 3 alternatives included in the logo?
When we had kind of the dialogue from Jeff's input, Commissioner Zita had recommended that we think about the goals and where we're landing and want to go with the process, and that would be implementation of an alternative. And so that kind of came out of that discussion, was including the alternatives potentially in the name. That's something we had kind of noodled over ourselves as well. It's definitely not something we have to necessarily land on.
Did the budget item identify the title or
The proviso. Do you still have that copy? Yes, it does.
I don't believe that it does.
It doesn't, well, it hasn't, the appropriations have varied in how they've referred to the project over the years as well.
I'm just saying, is there anything there that we have to make sure we address?
Oh, we did look into that, and it's not so prescriptive
Okay.
that it would drive the name or logo.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Right.
So just my gut reaction, feedback around branding. You've already gone out with this logo,
That's
right?
right.
And so, like, rule number 1 on branding is you don't switch your branding if you want to get the continuity of people understanding what they've already engaged, what process they've already engaged in. Rebranding's not always advisable, especially when you have something that says short term. 3 years is actually short term. Would it be feasible just to flip? Just put Lower Deschutes Watershed first, Capital Lake second, and leave the rest of it the same?
Like this one.
But this.
But without the
Without the alternatives.
Oh, absolutely.
Just keep it super simple. The other thing is there's too many words and people go,
That is the hard part that we even struggled with what we currently
It's
have.
already too many words.
Is that you're
Just
saying environmental impact statement and long-term management project, and then we wanted to recognize again that the geographic context of the watershed, and it's kind of huge.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
Okay. And then the last bit too is that your point is well taken. We would not, if we made a change, want to change until after scoping is complete, which I know now is only a few weeks away, but we would want to do that in a natural after scoping starting.
Yeah.
But yeah, there
There
is.
you've got your, that piece that stays the same and the colors and everything, but.
Yeah, if we kept this configuration and just switched, that's an option. Yep.
Well, Jeff, this is your issue. You brought it up last meeting. What do you think?
Your points are correct. I did bring it up last week. I've already conveyed to Jesse what I thought.
When I sent these, your reply that said you were not that keen on
Any of them.
any of them?
I
Would you
didn't
like to
like
expand on that?
Any of them. Well, I don't actually think that they are responsive to the issue that I raised, which was primarily the subordination of estuary to Capital Lake or anything else in context of the representation. And, you know, there's nowhere that these options equate Capital Lake, Deschutes Estuary. I happen to feel that Lower Deschutes Watershed is problematic from a number of perspectives. It's an inaccurate representation to the degree that there's any technical understanding of what Lower Deschutes Watershed is. It would be that area above Tumwater Falls. Capitol Lake is not Lower Deschutes Watershed, nor is the estuary Lower Deschutes Watershed. So I think it actually confuses people rather than clarifies for people what you were talking about. It's talking about something upstream. I am not wedded to the, characterizing all the, well, maybe not all the, but 3 options. I think that gets too busy and too wordy for a title. So I don't really see any benefit of putting estuary hybrid managed lake into the title. Would you like me to go on, or is that a good enough criticism?
I guess, or if we looked at it maybe from a problem solving, is there a suggestion that you have?
Well, yeah, I know. Chris, I talked with Chris about this the other
Just to
day.
inform
I said,
our decision making.
You guys are just making me come up with an option. And he said, yes, we are.
Well, we were aiming to be responsive to the dialogue
Well, so
request.
that was my point. I didn't think it was responsive. Like I said, because there is no place, there's no option that would equate or treat equally the estuary with the lake. And I think most people in the community at this point know that that's what the issue is about. So I mean, I don't think you need to diverge from that. So, I would say Capitol Lake, Deschutes Estuary, or actually my own voice would be Deschutes Estuary, Capitol Lake. Deschutes Estuary / Capitol Lake. Stick with the long-term management project, stick with the EIS, but, delete all the other stuff. I happen to think it's important to have estuary in the title with equal treatment as the lake. One further footnote I would make is that in your graphic design here, to the left, you've got birds, you've got people, you've got trees, maybe you have mountains, maybe you have waters, but you have no fish.
That's what's coming.
So it must have a little salmon jumping up and fighting for the out of the blue.
Well, I mean, that's what we're about, and that's why when I say that I think that there's a bias that's represented, it's those kind of things.
We did include people standing on the blue triangle.
Yeah, walking on water.
So that people would help to not have it just be water.
Nonetheless,
Mhm.
I mean, you could probably add, raccoons or nutria or, invasive species of some kind.
And yet we want to keep it simple, right?
But there's no fish
Where would you want to put the fish?
in the water.
Oh, where? On the water.
Well, it's not,
That's a good point. Yeah.
it gets
So-
dicey too.
But good specific suggestions, right?
Well,
Deschutes
I-
Estuary, Capitol Lake.
I just said
And then-
another footnote to my critique, so
Putting some
there
fish
it
in.
is.
No, thank you.
See, you start bugging me for stuff, you're gonna get stuff.
Question for
good.
you, Jeff. I have not run this by my secret folks, but I am going to ask in the vein of being productive. What would you think about Lower Deschutes River so that we are being consistent with trying to avoid the alternatives?
Capitol Lake was built on the estuary.
Totally get and respect
The
that.
area you're talking about is the estuary.
I understand what you're saying. I was just asking if that could be a good way to, because the purpose of the Lower Deschutes Watershed, when we originally envisioned it in phase 1, was to have that upstream and downstream, so that it wasn't just the 260 acre from below the Tumwater Falls to, the beginning of Bud Inlet. It was so that we could extend some of our geographic scope further than that for things like water quality or sediment.
Well,
And
if
so,
you wanted to do that, then you go Deschutes Watershed, Capitol Lake, Estuary, Bud Inlet, South Puget Sound,
Uh-huh.
Salish Sea. Yeah, I mean, where do you stop? I'm trying to get to the point where it accurately represents the geography and people know what you're talking about.
Well, and the Deschutes Estuary does include everything from the falls up through Bud Inlet, right? Because it goes beyond the dam.
Mhm.
So,
How
in
broad
a
do you
sense,
want
that
that?
is a geographical.
That's why I said just Deschutes Estuary, Capitol Lake. Call it good.
Are you good with that?
Yeah. That's what I said.
Oh,
I do-
Other thoughts?
So you just
Pete?
change.
Well, I don't think that calling it that limits the options, because one of the comments that we have is that controlling the sediment in the river is,
is it problematic area?
probably part of the picture. If you can keep it from coming in, then you have less to deal with at the end. But I don't see this as precluding that as a, part of a management option necessarily.
So other thoughts about what's being proposed here? And there's lots of other feedback, so you're not being asked to reach a decision here, but just other
I can give a thumbs
thoughts?
up on .5, changing it to that, it's fine. It's actually simpler,
Yeah.
one less word.
But does it get the broader scope of the problem, what being done here, as far as from the falls to the Bud Inlet?
You say it does not?
I don't think so, the title doesn't do that. So, and I love Jeff to death, but I just think it needs to be broader. I respect the narrative he's trying to say there, because it is that in the end. But to arrive at that, you gotta have the river involved in that. So.
Is there anything you could suggest that could help make that more inclusive for what you're thinking about?
Because the Deschutes does relate to it in the sense of the Deschutes River. I don't know.
Is the watershed defined? Is there a legal definition for that?
Well, why were 13 or
You mean Brian?
13, however you want to say it?
I'd say one umbrella.
I say it without dyslexia.
That's true.
It comes with education.
Okay.
So I mean, that is a physical body
Extent
that's
or-
been legally defined.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I chuckled at that because these water resource planning projects are taking shape, and as well as Yelm is still trying to get their water right, and as Olympia and Lacey know, the two watersheds, the Deschutes Watershed and the Nisqually Watershed, are very interactive.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
same thing with the Chehalis River.
So-
I don't think there's a,
Yeah, there's a line on the map,
Right.
but especially groundwater hydrology, it's back and forth. It's
Right.
not a
Do you have a
clear.
proposal?
Yeah,
Yeah, all
it's
right.
scribbling, okay? So I would say Deschutes Watershed, environmental impact statement, estuary, and I don't know if I'd say Capitol Lake, but they have the lake in there. And
So you want to go back to listing the three options?
to the alternatives, I was.
Oh,
Mhm. That way it covers his and, for the conversation's sake, the broader and the narrative at the same time.
So you would put in,
But I take out hybrid. I know that's a possibility, but just for the marketing prospect,
So you would have Deschutes Watershed, Estuary, and Capitol Lake, long-term
yeah,
management
but
plan.
estuary just underneath Deschutes Watershed.
Oh,
Like that?
so like that? And then have Estuary and Capitol Lake under here?
Yeah. I don't know. That way you get both. I'm trying to make happy here.
Or
That's right.
or perhaps because since people are throwing stuff up on the wall,
Yeah.
we can say Deschutes watershed hyphen estuary Capitol Lake. I'm not sure if that's proper English or not. So,
We don't do that in fact, but we did.
Deschutes Watershed hyphen Estuary?
yes.
And then are y'all agreeing generally from a recommendation standpoint that long-term management plan being there makes sense? Did you include that somewhere?
I think it needs to be in there.
Oh, Capitol Lake.
No,
long-term
long-term
management
management.
plan.
Oh, does it?
Because I can keep writing it, but if that's, is kind of a solid place you're at. So let me just check in real quick. So I think you weren't looking for a consensus decision today, but you were wanting to get the best recommendations you could, try to get a feel for it, and then take this back to DES and the project team? Is that how this is?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to go there, that I think that this, again, been helpful. We've dived a little more into different variations, and then let us kind of caucus internally and take all of this in. Chris?
You did say that this is, if we had a change in the name, that it wouldn't be until the January meeting, is that correct? Or after scoping?
After
After
scoping, yeah.
Which is the 13th of November.
So it seems like the takeaways are trying to get something that fits well with the geographic description of it.
Problem.
It sounded like having Deschutes in there somewhere feels good to people, so, and you seem to be pretty good with having long-term management in there. And I didn't hear anybody necessarily object to the concept of putting fish into the logo
Put a fish in there.
in some way, okay? Anything else you would want DES and the project team to think about?
Yeah, there really should be a saying.
It should be a salmon, he says. I'll say it.
Salmon.
You didn't
I
want to
don't
say
think
that.
Cape would have the same.
Okay.
I don't think most people know what an Olympic mud meadow is.
All right,
That's true.
okay, did you guys have what you need then on this one?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for that discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead
We
and
got more.
move into an update and overview of scoping. Did you want to go through major themes?
Who's first?
Yeah, should we do that?
So we had the 2 comment meetings, and what we'll do is recap what we heard from the verbal sessions at those comment meetings. We had about 100 folks total attend, and when presented with the opportunity to engage in the same format online or engage online with the same information, getting that 100 folks to the meeting, in our opinion, was pretty good. And we also had a really great discussion. For example, the last meeting that we had on the 22nd, so that was last Monday, there was about an hour of verbal commenting, and we had the opportunity to listen. What we heard will be available through a transcript online by early November. But I'll just recap that for you, and then this will again be recapped in the scoping report, but this is the sneak preview. So after the first scoping meeting on the 10th, we put together our 5 most prominent themes, and then after the second scoping meeting, we did that exercise again, and there turns out that there's enough of an overlap that we don't actually get to a list of 10. So the first theme was process, and there were a number of questions about when a decision will be made. The community is eager to see a preferred alternative identified. And then moving forward related to process, there were questions about the steps and timeline after a preferred alternative is identified, so questions about what that implementation timeline is. One of the next themes were about the alternative. So we got some technical questions and some general questions. The technical questions were of the tune, is the retaining wall and the hybrid feasible? What are the recreational options for each alternatives? What's the species-specific restoration for the alternatives? And then some more general questions related to alternatives, and that's what alternatives will be evaluated and what's the scoping process for identifying the reasonable range of alternatives for further evaluation in the EAS. This is not going to be a surprise. Sediment was the next primary theme, and we heard from commenters the request that we look closely at sediment, and of course that's echoed in the proviso, the funding appropriation for this project. We will absolutely look closely at sediment, but there were questions about where is it going, who would dredge it, how does this happen, what happens to the downstream users. Technical issues is kind of an umbrella for some of just the small or the more focused technical questions. So we heard about water quality, sea level rise, blue carbon science, bats and mosquitoes, invasive species. We heard clearly about cultural issues. So we heard both sides of that. The importance of the lake to the Wilder and White Plan was a theme of some of the comments. However, in contrast to that, it was the importance and cultural heritage of the area to the tribes. We heard both of those things. We heard about comprehensive planning. So that's really what we've been talking about, the need to look upstream and downstream to define our geographic scope in a broad way that does capture the interconnectedness of the system. And then to include the community in the planning effort. This could be through the community sounding board or a mediation process, but very much that they want it to be at the table. Two more. Economics. We heard about economics, funding considerations for implementation, that we should review not just impacts, but benefits and ecosystem service valuation. And then finally, a more focused conversation about potential impacts to LOT, the Port of Olympia, and other downstream users. And then the last theme that we captured was really a lot of questions about stakeholder engagement. So there were a number of questions about outreach to all local area tribes, about potential work from our project side or outreach to the Orca task force in relation to the broader salmon recovery efforts. And then finally, work with other interest groups, including LOT. Any questions on the themes? Again, the point of the comment period was to gather information. We weren't responding to each of the comments, but we were listening.
Jeff?
So for the sediment discussion, I guess what I'm interested in general, and picking on that topic, is did we hear anything that we haven't previously considered? In the context of scoping, we've obviously had a lot of conversation around sediment, and that is a key factor in this, and there's this, that, and the other that needs to be addressed. Did anybody come up with something that we haven't already targeted?
I have a thought on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess for me, I would say the way I sort of look at these comments is what does that drive us to in terms of the EIS? And so we've heard all of this interest in sediment, and we see it in the legislative proviso, and so that drives us to the sediment transport model that will be supplemented by a geomorphic assessment. So those comments get me there in terms of process. In terms of categorizing each of the comments, for the verbal comment session, there wasn't something that I had a light bulb go off for me or was new or would change what we're kind of anticipating will be part of the EIS, but that was from my perspective.
Yeah, I think what was a little bit of a different spin is, through the years there's been questions around the chemical quality of the sediments in the Capitol Lake basins and in Bud Inlet. And what does that mean if the dam is removed or if maintenance dredging occurs? What is the chemical quality that if you're doing dredging alternatives, under any alternative has dredging included, right? Where does that go and how does that influence? So that's something that's already been on the books and talked about, But the slight variation that was new is during the verbal comments, there was a question put forward around how would sediments from the river potentially come into Bud Inlet and cover existing contaminated sediments. And that's a slightly different question. So that contaminated sediment quality and that interplay in Bud Inlet is a little different than what I've heard before. So I think it fits in the umbrella of the sediment transport and evaluation work, but that was, in my mind, something that was slightly different. I hadn't heard that question asked that way before.
Well, in that case, I would apologize because I've tried to make that point before, that part of our thinking on sediment needs to include potential remediation strategies for Bud Inlet contamination. And there's an ongoing process the port's involved in, Department of Ecology is involved in, and they're looking at the extent of contamination and the sources of contamination and ultimately what to do about that. And there may be a twofer in this, in that some of the sediment remediation strategies in Bud Inlet could be a product or a result of sediment capping. There's different names for it and different strategies for it, but allowing natural capping of contaminated sediments over time. So I apologize if I haven't spelled that out or made that more clear in my expectations previously. But that's definitely there.
Yeah, the Bud Inlet remediation aspect has been voiced. It's an interesting balance or interplay of the natural recovery that could occur, right, with cleaner sediments coming into a system, but also being aware of operational elevation needs of different facilities. So there's a balance there. But
yeah, obviously you can't do that everywhere, but natural recovery is a typical strategy incorporated into remediation decisions.
Yep.
So this is kind of reminding me of a conversation I've heard about really wanting to encourage the jurisdictions to submit comments too, right?
Yeah.
So that would be,
Yeah, we were just going to today, but a little bit, provide a reminder that the scoping period does close on November 13th. And so we've been able, in meeting with the technical and funding and governance folks, to also just have them have a reminder for their agencies as individuals or agencies to submit comments within the scoping period. So hopefully you folks are able to do that as well via email or whatnot, submit comments. That would be great.
It's so helpful to us to get comments from each of the agencies that are coordinated, so that there is a clear, summary of those issues that are important to you. And we recognize that there will be some similarities and some differences, but to have that on record and have a good summary for us to look through when we're in the nitty-gritty and we're characterizing and helping to put shape for an EIS, we just can't stress it enough. So that's a way you can help us. Yep.
Okay, clarification question on that. Would you want us to go back to our councils and say individually as council members submit scoping comments, or would you prefer if we could get a consensus? I know my council's pretty much has consensus around this issue. Submit one letter from the council, or what would be more?
I would say we'll take either.
Either?
Yeah.
Yes,
and if they want to submit them, we will look at each one. If there is one letter, which is more typically how I've seen it done, an agency or departments within an agency submit, kind of summary letters, that holds just as much weight. And so I think that whatever is most convenient to you and your staff is what we'll take. Okay.
So we are just about 10 minutes over our time, but I think there's been some really important discussion. There may be more on this, if there's any other question or comment on the verbal comments that the issues have been raised. If you don't have anything pressing, then we might move on, and we might have to just, I'm not sure if there's a great opportunity to make up some time somewhere. We do want to be sure we have public comment, and I know we want to try to get the roundtable, but just to be aware. Anything else for this topic, though? Any other thoughts for Tessa? Or Tessa, did you have anything else?
I didn't have anything.
No, that's good. All right, so we were able, like we mentioned, to meet with the technical work group on October 11th and the funding and governance work group that afternoon as well. And what's really fortunate and great is that we had representation from all of the technical work group agencies that are willing to put time into the process and were part of phase 1 and continuing into phase 2. So that includes representation from ecology and fish and wildlife, DNR, the city, Thurston County. So it was a good range of folks. That meeting was really kind of our kickoff meeting where we were walking through the process map, kind of similar to what we did with you guys. There was less of a dialogue in that meeting because that is the technical work group, so those folks are focused on the technical analysis as part of the EIS. But what is important with that group is that moving forward, and this has already come up a little bit today, just around what other activities and agency efforts are occurring in Bud Inlet or throughout the area. We want to really leverage the participation of those folks on the technical work group to engage those agencies and coordinate with them on the other initiatives that they have ongoing. So that's sea level rise, that's TMDL, things of that nature. So we will be reaching out to those folks, able to have their input as we digest the comments received during scoping, and make sure that we are aware of their processes and major milestones as we move through the technical analysis of the EIS as well. And those folks allow us the opportunity to reach into their organization and understand what other resources of data is available, things of that nature as well. So we'll be coordinating with those folks as the year comes, 2018 closes out, in prep for the 2019 technical analysis as well. The other thing that we discussed with the technical work group, and then we'll move on to funding and governance as well, was participation within the work groups. And as part of the interest group briefing with lots question around their participation in the process. And so the technical work group also thought it made sense to have lot participation at that table as well. And so we discussed that with them. And then that afternoon when we met with the funding and governance work group, again, we walked through the process map. It was kind of our kickoff to here we are and where we're going. We put the question to that group as well about having lot participation, and they also thought it would be great to have their participation at the funding and governance level as well. We also had good continuity with folks from phase 1 into phase 2 with funding and governance. We were able just to revisit with them the attributes of a shared funding and governance model that came out of phase 1, kind of as a starting place and a refresher to some extent for phase 2. The funding and governance work group also had some good questions about alternatives moving forward into the EIS, the range of those alternatives, the no action alternative, things along those lines. We also discussed with them the commitment within this EIS process to include an economic analysis that has impacts and benefits, so impacts to commercial, industrial sectors, and the benefits like Tessa has touched on and we heard around the ecosystem service value. So we had a dialogue around that and really, go ahead.
Can you explain what an ecosystem service value is?
Gosh, do you want to try that? We're kind of getting into that right now with one of our teaming partners is, we also, in addition to the engineers and hydrogeologists and biologists that comprise our technical team, we also have economists that will be working with and drawing from their experience on other EIS projects to pull in and fit to this one as well.
So it's not like tourism, it's a different type of economic.
Kind of like, there's an inherent value
Yeah.
in the environment, in a grove of trees, in
Yes.
wetlands, that is not just the classic subdivide it and make houses out of it. There's other values to that, and this is a way of trying to quantify that.
Exactly, and one of the things we really want to work with them is be able to mine existing data and approaches and values that have been assigned to different environmental aspects throughout Puget Sound so that we can have consistency with other approaches and kind of precedents that come into the fold. So that part of it has some, the economic analysis will have a fair amount, as you would expect, of quantifiable information around cost. And then there's also some qualitative components when you start to get into how individuals participate and enjoy a resource. So it ends up kind of a mix of those two things.
I think the port did some of that for their land.
Someone by your should too. We'll make
You
a
should
note of
check
that.
and see. I think I've seen a report to that effect.
Okay. That's okay. And so the last thing I just wanted to mention on the funding and governance work group as well is, this project, we've kind of said this before, that we see the funding and governance work group being a unique opportunity to look at how there really can be a shared funding model for the preferred alternative so that we really can move as quickly as possible from an EIS identifying a preferred alternative into securing funding to get to permitting design so there's not a big time lag. So one of the things we want to really be mindful of, strategic, and take advantage of is syncing with that work group and making sure that we get them what they need throughout the process as well to support their work around shared funding. So we expect that process to have a two-way exchange of information as their work kind of runs parallel to what we're doing at some extent, and then we kind of cross and dovetail through the process. But any questions on technical work group or funding and governance work group at this time? Mm-hmm.
One of the themes that came out of asking the legislature for this amount of money, what we were up to 3.9 or 4?
4 million.
4 million, but we needed 4.9.
Yes.
Okay, so we're considering going back to the legislature to get that additional funding. Weren't one of the budgets, the House or the Senate, said we needed to provide a match, or they were asking for a match from the governing agencies that were related, the cities and the county, that they wanted some kind of match? And we were like,
Mm-hmm.
But can you count the intellectual capital of those work group hours? As in, like, we're bringing this, like, we're providing staffing from the city.
As a contribution to
As
the
a
process.
contribution.
It's a good point, and it's similar to a question that was raised around when some of the kind of process participating agencies are undertaking initiatives in which they are collecting data that supports part of the technical analysis of the EIS. Is that also in a way the local entities contributing to the process as well, right? So there's kind of, that's a good point, there's the technical component of it, and then there's also the staffing commitment and component.
Because we're pulling them off other things to do this, so it is costing, the city.
So you guys spent a lot of money mapping all the stormwater outfalls and all of that.
You could go out.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of work that Olympia's done, and I don't know what kind of testing, what quality testing's been done as well. Well, first of all, I think lots should be not just at the the funding, because they have a unique authority, shall we say, and an ability to bring a different option to the table. In terms of funding, they also, of course, have a very strong technical capability, so I think they should be on both of those. I think they should be here as well, and the reason why I think that is because Lacey is part of that group, and while Lacey only has a small piece of the watershed, ultimately,
They pay into a lot.
they're part of lot, and I think they should have a voice at this table through lot. So I think having, in this case, Cynthia Pratt is their representative here participating would make sense as the lot representative.
Board, and she's from Lacey.
And she's also from Lacey, right? So
Lacey declined last time.
they did, yeah. So I don't know, in a role of lot though, maybe not so much. That
And
might-
maybe given today where we're at in the real EIS process versus kind of that phase one as a foundation to the EIS. But there seems to be consensus across the participants of the work groups that there's definitely benefit from having lot at the table. And it was great, and a positive thing coming out of the interest group briefings is lots of participation, and the folks and team that they had and that they expressed interest was really positive. So we will circle back with those folks and entity and reach out to them.
Chris?
So what I'm hearing you say is that we should add a lot to this executive work.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, as well as our technical
I don't know,
financial.
where do you feel, Jeff, on that? I mean, they're the major discharger,
Well,
permanent discharger.
I don't have any problem with it. I guess my only curiosity is that the only way we rope Lacey into this?
Yeah.
I mean, we asked them before and they declined.
That's
Well, it's
what
because they didn't want any responsibility for
Well, I
paying
know,
for it.
but I mean, like I said, that's a curiosity. It's not an objection.
I say lot, no matter what, but let lot choose who they want to put it. I mean, it's no problem.
I don't think the state has any objections.
Because they also, it affects Lacey through lot, through sea level rise, which is also one part of the scope of how the estuary relates and how we manage this body of water and how it relates to what we're trying to do around climate mitigation and our adaptation and sea level rise.
Well,
So do you want me to note as a follow-up to check into
Yeah, I said,
talking, consulting someone from Water?
Retreat.
Is that what you do?
The issue with lot, though, we all have representation in the lot. I mean,
Yeah.
so, but you're calling out Lacey, and we already asked Lacey, and they declined. And so why not just send another invite to Lacey in addition to lot?
We could.
Yeah, I mean,
I would be fine with
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I don't think they're mayors.
Do you want me to include that? Because I have lots, do you want to include also?
Or just go back to my statement, let lot choose who they want. You know,
Yeah.
For lot's interest. So.
Good with this, and then see what happens? Is that what I'm,
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
I do have a different group though, and that is the core, particularly the permitting side of the core. Have they been invited to any of these meetings and just decided not to participate, or what?
We have reached out to both the Army Corps of Engineers and DAP.
That being,
Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation.
oh, okay.
We've reached out to both of those agencies to brief and communicate them on the process, invite them to participate in the technical work group in particular. And we saw that being mutually beneficial to have them be aware of our process so that we could address questions or make sure that we factor in what would be needed for phase 3 for permitting. And that we also appropriately in any of the alternatives included those required mitigation measures or acknowledgement of areas of cultural or historical significance, etc. So we are coordinating with DAP, and the Corps has agreed to participate and to be responsive and assist in the process when we have specific questions and topics to engage with them. And if we have technical work group meetings where we're really focused on one element that pertains, under kind of the core's purview, they can have someone participate and come to those meetings. But on a regular basis of all of our project meetings, they would not participate as a continuous member of the technical work group, but are a resource and will track it, and we will provide briefings to them. That's where they kind of landed on it.
I would just support or say that they have resource constraints that I know we all, are considering that, but given the federal overlay, there was consideration related to that, regardless of how good how persuasive we are. But Jesse will include them on all of the work group emails, the technical work group emails, so that they can see, and then at that point they can determine whether this is a conversation specific to an overlay that they might have with the process. So they'll be updated that way too, outside of the briefings even.
Exactly, and as we're going through the technical analysis, we'll be tracking items particularly relevant for the core federal permitting, so that we can reach out and say, okay, now this, and make sure we have their input to help support phase 3 in permitting as much as possible.
Okay.
All right, any other, you know me, kind of keeping an eye on the time here, so we haven't caught up yet, but again, important discussion that you need to have, so bumping this down a bit. Any other questions or concerns you want to raise for the initial work group meetings? Did you have anything else, Jesse? Okay, want to hop to the next?
Yes, let's go there. So supplemental engagement opportunities. I did want to pass out 2 things, and I'm going to pass out this with a table we have. So just because I want to do this now. One of the action items we had in our requests, Jeff, was just a meeting roster. So we have a hard copy with us today. It's just a list of the meetings, briefings, and presentations that have occurred in October. It ends today because that happens to be everything we have scheduled through September and October. Not that we left off anything. As additional meetings or briefings are on the books, we will update this and provide you so that you can track and understand where there's opportunities for folks to participate, and we'll keep this updated on the website as well. As you can imagine, September, October really was a very busy month related to getting the word out for scoping and the scoping meetings. In November and December, that's where, I don't know if I'd say things will go quiet, but there's less participation in briefings, as that's when we are digesting the scoping comments and doing the scoping report. But we will keep this updated, and as part of the executive work group, agendas just provide you so you know what's on the books and forecasted out ahead of us. Relative to the supplemental engagement opportunities, did you want to describe just an update on the interest group briefings?
Oh, sure.
We have that listed here, but maybe we can go to the table.
So since we last met, and as part of our supplemental engagement opportunities, we have met with 6 interest groups, and the way we sort of identified those interest groups were those that had already been engaged in the process, and we have had meetings with them. Let me list them, and then we can go quickly through the purpose. So we met with CLIPA and DIRT, Thurston County Chamber, Olympia Downtown Alliance, LOT, and the Recreational Voters Association. That's not in order of how we did them, but the purpose of those briefings were to provide an overview of the process, the environmental impact statement, to describe to them the scoping process and what we hope to achieve in the scoping process, and the opportunities and ways to comment, and to help answer any questions about how they can provide better comments or comments that may be more influential. And then we also had an opportunity to discuss the additional engagement opportunities. So we described the folks that we were meeting with as part of the interest groups, the community sounding board that Jesse described to you in October, at our October 2nd meeting, and then also our intermittent additional engagement just out in the community. Those have been pretty well received, and we've heard good feedback from the participants about this being a helpful component of the process, and we are considering this, given the feedback, as part of our draft environmental impact statement milestone as well.
Thank you for doing that. Any questions before we move to public engagement opportunities?
What is the community sounding board? That's something new.
No, that was the concept. We have shapes on here. It's the gray three
Okay.
circles.
Dark gray.
All of the shapes. Our thought concept of the community sounding board was that we would be able to invite participants that represent a diverse range of community interests and be able to have an open discussion on key items that are part of the EIS process and the technical evaluation, so that folks could share ideas, express viewpoints, and that we would be able to have that dialogue and bring that information and discussion into the work group meetings and communicate what was really important and of value for those community members. And so we wanted to first vet that community sounding board concept with you folks on the second today and the work groups, and then we'll have work as we get into 2019, so through the end of 2018, to really flesh out that concept and invitation, and we'd like to have a student or youth participation in the sounding board as well as those groups that received or had the interest group briefings that Tessa described as well. Those are also great organizations that have had involvement and commitment to the long-term management of Capitol Lake. So we would envision those folks being invited to participate, as well as, youth, and we've had suggestions of maybe other organizations or Orca Task Force and things of that nature that might come into that as well. So that would be something that would be in 2019 once we're kind of getting into the technical work of the EIS.
Just a minor point, but I think it's good for you to have it added if I missed it. The Olympia Downtown Alliance, you said you did meet with them?
No.
You probably want to document that just for the record.
That's a good
yes.
point. We actually...
That was today.
Yeah, that was today.
So you're right.
It was this morning, and we put this together, and since that time, actually got that scheduled, so we'll update this.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna be okay at time here. So our item on the agenda, potential future public engagement opportunities. This was something that we talked about on the second, and we all had kind of a homework item to this. Our homework item, and Mayor Selby, you had a good suggestion about going to Experience Olympia. We would mind that and a couple other resources to put together a compiled list of community events, and we'll kind of pass this out both ways here. Oh, sorry about that. Community events right now that are identified for 2018, but would be expected to occur in 2019, plus or minus a few dates, right? But the seasonal dates should be correct, the event, the community, and the website. You're not expected to read all of this, the front and back right now, and know if anything is missing, but this is kind of a compiled list of opportunities for engagement in 2019, and our thought is that we would be able to, as we work through the scoping comments, when scoping closes in November and we're working on the report, like we've said, that's when we have the opportunity to really look at a detailed schedule for 2019. And within that context, can think about these events so that when we meet with you in January, we would probably have our eyes set on a few of these that we would potentially anticipate participating in. And as Tessa walked through with the major kind of milestones around the EIS, the draft EIS is expected to come out in 2020, not 2019, but we would still like to communicate to the community the EIS work that is occurring and kind of, keep somewhere in the purview of people's minds so they don't forget about the project, that they're thinking about it, we can still hear input from them, and that they're engaged and aware of the draft EIS coming out in 2020. So your homework item was, if you have events that you think really would be great for us to communicate or participate in. And what you'll note is this is, I'm sure, not all inclusive of everything. And we didn't have access and include, Jeff in particular, tribal events that could be opportunities for engagement as well. So if there are tribal events that you're aware of, we would love to know about them for 2019.
Or county.
And county, yes, exactly.
See, Lacey, you get no more.
So their assignment is to look at this before
Yes,
January.
Thurston kind of a county encompasses a couple. Yeah, if you could look at this, exactly right, thank you, Susan. Look at this before our January meeting and just see if you say, hey, there's 2 that you're missing here that might be good to consider. That would be great.
These dates are from last year, I'm assuming, you say 18.
That is correct, yeah, they don't have the 2019 dates, this shows 2018, but we can probably estimate, give or take, it'll be still in May of 2019 or something along those lines. The season's probably right.
Yeah, you don't include August on here.
Back sheet.
Yeah, I can't really hear on that, my bad, sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the Brew Fest.
Jesse, as they're considering this table and thinking about what might be missing, do you want them to be contemplating of those what they think might be higher value, or is there any kind of a conversation around prioritizing or
I
some
think
number
that-
to focus on? Or?
Well, we'll need to, like I was saying, as we are identifying our schedule in 2019 in a more granular way, think about where the events fall relative to that and what makes the most sense. But if you folks are aware of additional or events on this list that you really feel has good community outreach that you would recommend or put forward, we'd love to know about that so that we could prioritize those as potentially when we look at where are our opportunities, we can take that into the decision making.
You want us to report, not right now, but later.
Yeah, later is just fine. I know this is a long list. We didn't expect you to be like, aha, you're missing. I've got it, yeah.
And what would be your MO for these occasions?
It varies. Sometimes like the arts walk, that was where it was handing out flyers. Other times it might be that we have a booth and are able to have more of a presence. So I think that would vary a bit depending on the event and the format of the event. Yeah, so we could be somewhat flexible depending on what makes sense.
Yeah, keeping the project relevant, keeping the name recognition, answering process-related questions for the community, helping them understand that there are ways to engage, whether that be, additional participation in the sounding board if that's something, or, when letting them know when the draft will be out so that they can comment at that time. Just really making sure that we're relevant and known and part of the community dialogue.
And those community sounding board meetings will be open to the public. So it might be an opportunity that if someone wants an update on the process or some of the technical analysis, they can attend. And of course, all of our work group meetings are also open to the public. So it's kind of a reminder for folks as well. Any questions on that?
I just want to comment here on, like, for instance, some of these have multiple dates because they're like concert series or whatever series. So you're not saying you're going to be at every concert, but you may be at selected concerts. Is that what you're saying?
Or this is not the list of what we plan on participating. It is just the list of opportunities.
Okay, I got
Exactly.
you. Thank you.
Ray, and then you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think events where there's some kind of nexus between the people and the project. So I'll throw out an example that might make sense. Duck Dash. People are at the at the falls. They're engaged with the water body on the the upland side of it. But that's an opportunity for us to say, hey, you may not think that you have an interest in this project, but actually you do. You experience it in a different way than people on the other end of the lake. But that kind of nexus is a really cool opportunity to get people engaged that might otherwise just sort of pass by and say, oh, that's not a thing that I'm interested in worrying about. Thank you.
And when you actually, some of these, you don't really have much opportunity to, like during an Easter egg dash, the kids are all about the candy and the parents are chasing the kids. So you're not going to have a good,
That is so true.
opportunity. So somebody gets what you said, it's like, where are
We
you
have
the best?
EIS findings in the eggs.
There you go.
Things.
It's like a Hershey's Kiss and it's a project
It's a
day.
bad.
Preferred alternative.
Search for the preferred alternative.
I want to have a reveal party.
Yeah.
Just come out for the preferred alternative.
Oh, that's funny.
So we will track this, and our vision for this is January. We would say, hey, here's a few we're thinking of, but that for now. Okay, and
Wow, we were
have
like
Nate
back
a
on
little bit of
time.
time. Okay,
Super
so
excited.
before we go to feedback really quick, I was looking at the doodle poll, the few folks that have had the chance, I know you are busy people. It was looking like maybe January 11th, Friday, was the best day. Maybe Monday the 14th was an option too, but that seemed to have, so, and of course there's certain hours of each day that don't work, but there was some good examples.
Yeah, 11th would work for me.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
11th would work for me.
It's our council retreat.
On the
It's not the 11th, okay.
That sounds fun.
What,
In the lockboard room.
what does
It's not like we
your
go away.
Thursday the 10th or Monday the 14th look like?
Monday the 14th.
10th would work for me, or the 14th could work also.
Okay.
Any objection to 10th or 14th? Anybody have
Do we have
no way?
times though within those?
Yeah, that's what I need the time. And
I did a bunch of like 2-hour slots, so we could,
So we should just do a doodle poll when we're done.
that would be best. I just thought if there's anything I know doesn't work right now. So if you can do that doodle poll, that'll be great. And I tried to do a bunch in a day to see what works.
all 3 days work for me.
Okay. Thank
It
you.
sounds like the 11th is not. gonna
Is
work.
out, like we was, yeah. Okay. Tessa, what she was just reminding me, which was great, is that meeting documentation, the meeting summary was provided to you guys via email with that doodle poll. And what we are aiming to do is be able to provide the meeting documentation to the website 1 month following the meeting. So that would mean that the October 2nd meeting notes or documentation would be posted to the website by November 2nd. And in that process, then, we are giving you 1 week to review the meeting documentation, to provide us with any edits, comments, questions you may have. So that would be by, well, today. And that's today. So, but this is our first one. So we'll
Right,
go with
right.
tomorrow. We can go with tomorrow if needed. They're pretty straightforward, but please let us know if you have any edits or questions, or we captured anything too generally or too detailed, whatever. We're open here to how it best serves, your process as well. Okay, so roundtable feedback. Is there anything that, just for the good of the order, you folks would want to share, provide input, thoughts, the like? It's just kind of an open few minutes.
Well, the only thing I would say is I think you're going to find that the scoping comments are covering a huge range of issues. And we have neither the budget nor, I think, the time to do a scientific study here. It could take, decades if you really were to explore every issue to the nth degree. So I think this needs to be focused pretty carefully, and we'll need to gather some additional information, I think, to reconfirm some of the earlier testing that's been done, whatever. But I hope that we can focus this and get it done this time. The legislature made it very clear we're not going to get any more money, so we need to work within the budget that we've got.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And I would say that, the purpose of scoping is really to narrow the focus of the environmental impact statement to significant issues. And so we'll keep an eye for that as we're moving through the comments and when we bring them to you.
Anyone else? Comments?
I just had a small request. You read some, a list of items there that were public comments. Are you going to send them out in the notes, or how can I get a hold of those, I guess?
Oh, we will capture these in the scoping report, but Jesse, do you?
Well, I think we could absolutely have that in the meeting documentation for
That would help
today.
me tell the board.
Yeah.
what-
Just generally the themes?
Yeah, just the title, I don't want the actual.
Yeah, just we'll do that. Megan helps us with this, so we will kind of bold and make sure we capture those, and you can have them in the meeting minutes. That's a good point to make sure we capture. Okay. Anything else? I think we can provide the opportunity for public
Yeah,
comments
I
or
think-
questions. Does anyone from the public have anything today?
And do we want to, I know we've got a little bit of time here, but do we want to just generally say a couple minutes, or
That sounds good.
that sound all right?
Okay, don't start yet.
I wouldn't even dream of it. I don't even have the timer up yet. So
Thank you, appreciate it. First of all, I think having a lot at the table is a really good idea, and I really applaud that decision. I wanted to thank you for getting the scoping comments from the 10th on the website. They're very interesting. I read them, and I hope that as the scoping comments from the 22nd get put on, maybe, I mean, I can keep an eye on the library tab of the website, but a little notice here and there would be great to let people know that they're available.
Okay.
Also, the meeting notices for these meetings, I just happened to look at the website this morning and noticed that there was a meeting today. And so no one else knew there was a meeting today unless they looked at the website. So I just wondered if that would be something that will be sent out to the interest groups or people that want to maybe come and listen to what you guys have to say
That's a really good question.
in the future. I mean, that's what happened in phase one, so
It's people.
it
No,
makes
that's
sense to
understood.
do it again. And then the ecosystem services piece, it's really important to evaluate the value of the environment and the things that help build a healthy area in terms of the future generations. The kids, they're not here, and they haven't had a voice, and I know at DIRT, we really try hard to keep youth involved and keep youth informed all the time. You know, here's what's going on, and you'd be amazed at how much they know about the estuary river lake issue. It's pretty phenomenal. I think all the schools in the area have been studying this, science classes, and I know we've talked to many classes about what's going on. So just, kids are important, so keep that in mind, future generations. And then the last thing is August 24th, 2019, it's Festival of the Deschutes. And I extend a hand out to you folks to be there, unlike last time you weren't. So please, please join us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Just want to make a comment that from our perspective at CLIPA, that we think the consulting team has been very responsive to our questions and provide good guidance to what we've done, and we've been sharing with them information that we think is important to the scoping process. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Anyone else want to provide public comment? All right, we have some follow-up items, and we can translate those into action items where appropriate, and some of them are down the road and will be agenda items for the January meeting, so I think we're in good shape there. Yeah, was there anything else that you
No, I think that's it. Thank you for your time. If you're able to do the doodle poll, let us know if you have comments on the meeting documentation from the 2nd. We will transmit the documentation within a couple weeks from this meeting today as well, and have scoping themes. We will revisit project logo variations and be doing
It's like picking out wallpaper. It's like, what's different?
And we have homework to do.
That's right, homework for January.
Exactly.
Not pink color.
exactly. And we'll reach out to Lot as well. Thank you,
You know what?
everyone, and happy Halloween.
You said